Hi, welcome to BFS Wargaming. Patrick here. We're going to talk about the lore in Warhammer 40k. So we're just going to talk about the overview of the lore, so the main storyline, because there's many storylines going on in Warhammer 40k. We're going to get onto the armies in another video because there's so much to get through, and this video would end up being very, very long. So we're just going to give you a main overview of the storyline. So I'm going to disappear into the warp so you don't have to keep looking at me, so you can concentrate on the nice artwork. So you'll hear me in a second.
Warhammer 40,000 is set in the Milky Way galaxy in the 41st millennium, where in the grim darkness of the far future there is only war. So the main storyline in Warhammer 40,000 is set around Earth, or Holy Terra as it will be known. So we start our story from the 15th millennium, on planet Earth, or Terra. There started the Age of Technology, which became known as the Dark Age of Technology. The human race invented warp drives and could span the stars. They created an empire that spanned the galaxy, and this lasted for 10,000 years. Then warp storms started to happen across the galaxy, which stopped the human race being able to travel and trade. And back on Terra, planets like Terra, where the population was so overgrown they couldn't feed themselves and things like that, then became infighting. Warlords cropped up all over Terra. There were huge civil wars. And this was the point that the man or being known as the Emperor stepped forward. This was known as the Age of Strife, which lasted 5,000 years. The Emperor started a new war called the Unification Wars. His objective was to unify Terra. The Unification Wars brought an end to the Age of Strife, and the Emperor created superhuman soldiers, known as Thunder Warriors, to win this war and unify all of Terra. Once the Emperor had united Terra, he created the Imperium of Mankind, and his next step was to go on a great crusade. The Emperor then created 20 Primarchs. These were going to be his generals and his sons, and they would help lead his armies in this great crusade across the galaxy. From these Primarchs were taken their genes to create super soldiers. These super soldiers would have the genes of each separate Primarch, and that would be the Primarch's Legion. These super soldiers were to be known as the Adeptus Astartes, or Space Marines. The ruinous powers of chaos sent these Primarchs as babies all across the galaxy. Each grew up on a different planet, and they were raised differently. The Emperor, on his great crusade, found each one of them, apart from two, from which we don't know what happened to in the lore. Now I'm going to talk about chaos and the warp and the immaterium, so you understand what that is, as it's a big part of Warhammer 40,000 lore. There is a mirror dimension in the galaxy called the warp or the immaterium. This has torn holes in real space across the galaxy, spewing forth demons and the like. There are psychics across the galaxy from different races. Each of them can draw power from the warp and use magical powers. There are 4 chaos gods and their demons who live in the warp, all comprised from psychic energy. Each chaos god represents something different. Khorne is the lord of battle, requiring blood for the blood god. Tzeentch is the architect of fate and change, using powerful sorceries to bend the future to his will. Then we have Nurgle, the lord of decay, spreading infection and disease. Lastly, we have the youngest god, Slaanesh, the Dark Prince, indulgent of every pleasure and excess. The emotions and actions of the beings in the galaxy feed all of these gods. Now the Emperor on his great crusade, he finds each of his Primarchs, like I said, apart from 2. So there's 18 Primarchs. They've all helped the Emperor across the galaxy, take over planets, kill alien races, and make the empire of mankind bigger. The Emperor has now gone back to Terra to work on private projects, secret projects, and he leaves his favoured son, Horus, in charge and gives him the title of War Master. So he is now in charge of the Great Crusade and the Empire of Mankind. Now we go into the Horus Heresy, which happened around the 30,000th millennium. So 10,000 years before the current Warhammer 40,000 setting, the Emperor's favoured son Horus, who he gave the title of War Master to, betrayed the Emperor and turned to chaos. With him, 8 of his brothers followed. With this, there was a huge civil war. Horus, followed by his 8 brother Primarchs, wanted to overthrow the Imperium and the Emperor. The Emperor's 9 loyalist Primarchs fought the traitor Primarchs, and this era became known as the Horus Heresy. The traitor Primarchs, fueled by chaos, attacked Terra. There was a huge battle, and in this battle, Horus was defeated, and the Emperor was mortally wounded. The Emperor, now a husk of his former self, sits on the golden throne as a corpse, but his mind still working, keeping chaos at bay. The Emperor never wanted to be seen as a god, but is now worshipped as one by the Imperium. This then brings us to the current setting, where some of the Primarchs are missing, some have returned, some of the Demon Primarchs are in the warp, and we will see what's going to play out with that storyline in Warhammer 40,000. I haven't touched on the Xenos races in this overview because as we go through each army and talk about the lore in future videos, you will obviously hear each of them Xenos races backstory as well, which is like an extra to the main storyline. This is just an overview of the lore. There's so much background lore and it goes off in so many different directions. Warhammer 40k, you could spend a long time just reading about the Horus Heresy, or you could spend time reading about your favoured faction. There's so much lore and so much backstory. It's just brilliant. Really is great. I highly recommend you go and look into things that you're interested more, whether you want to look into the Horus Heresy, whether you want to just look into the Emperor, the Chaos Gods. Honestly, go and have a look. This is just an overview. I'm just giving you a little snippet of what Warhammer 40,000 is all about. So thank you very much for tuning in for another video. I hope you enjoyed it, and please give us a like and subscribe if you enjoyed it. We have plenty more content to come, so thank you very much. Bye.